Welcome to episode number 4 of ISPC Tailboard Talks. I'm your host, Mark, and along with me, I got my co-host, Jerry. How you doing this morning, Jerry?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Good to be back together.
Yeah. So I guess let's jump right in. Why don't we tell a little bit about our sponsor today, Jerry? You want to let us?
Today's show is brought to you by Beer Meters. Beer Meters USA made, family operated manufacturer for almost 40 years. Beer Products produces the absolute highest quality, lineman proven, safe, dependable, accurate voltage and phasing meters, secondary testers, cable identification tools, ground testers, high pot tools, custom temporary protective grounds, jumpers, and pole guards. I have been to their facility. It is just above bar, man. They just have a great facility. Everything is run by just some phenomenal individuals. Beermeters.com. Together, we are changing our electric culture of safety.
Awesome. Thanks, Jerry. And yeah, I can attest too. I've used some of Beer's stuff. It's top quality equipment. I've been to their factory as well. Pretty neat facility. Met the majority of their people that work there. So family owned, top notch company. Really impressed with what they got.
Yeah, I got a chance to do one of their ECOS webinars, and went out there. You've done it too. Actually, all three of you, or all three of us have done one, right? Mike, you did one too?
That's correct.
Yeah. So we've, the full boat of people here that have been to that facility and can attest to their quality and their I like the family atmosphere and attitude, man. Yeah. They know everybody and everybody's families, and they're very tight knit and take a lot of pride in what they do. So I do love me some Brent Jeffries at Beer Meters. He's a good guy.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. So, okay. So today we have a very special guest with us that we're going to get to in a little bit. We have Mike Starner from NECA, who's with us today. So we'll get to him here very shortly. Can't wait to talk to Mike. Always a pleasure talking with him. First, though, we're going to sort of go through our ISPC Tailboard Talks. And today our topic that we're going to cover is hydration/dehydration facts. And so, obviously some parts of the country are already in this mode. I'm not one of them up here in the Northeast. It's about 35 degrees here this morning. Although it doesn't matter, right? I think one of the fallacies out there is you can't get dehydrated in cold weather, and that's absolutely not the case, right? It doesn't really matter what the weather is. If you're not putting the proper fluids in your body, you're going to be in trouble. So, I think something that we all got to be on the watch out for.
And look, just sitting in a cool environment, you can lose about 17 ounces of bodily fluid a day just from sweating, just from what they call it cutaneous evaporation, sweating and just your body breathing. It's normal. So, 17 ounces, that's not a small amount. And it's just doing nothing in a cool environment, sitting in an office all day. So good things to remember, good facts. The body is 60% water. And loss from that evaporation, like I said, you can lose up to 17 ounces a day just at rest, up to 2.6 gallons during exercise in the heat. So, line workers do the equivalent of a high intensity interval training on a daily basis for 8 hours for the most part. On a 12-hour day. I mean, you're not going to work the whole time, but let's give them 8 hours. So just 2.6 gallons during exercise. That's moderate exercise. During the day, guys, you're going to lose a lot more water than that, especially depending on humidity, wet bulb temperature out there. Be careful. Make sure you rehydrate. That's dehydration actually can cause unclear thinking, which in this industry can kill you quickly, mood change, and cause your body to overheat and lead to, in the very least, constipation and kidney stones. So the proper amount of water in your body will help save you a bunch of issues. It keeps your body at a normal temperature and lubricates. I did not know this, and I found this out. It lubricates and cushions your joints. So if you're dehydrated, your joints will ache more. So if it's your turn on the pole in the hooks, make sure you're very well hydrated.
I think too, Jerry, the other thing, I think it's a good importance to mention is if you wait until you start to feel the signs of dehydration, it's too late. You're done. This is not something where I can go along working and I get to say, oh, I'm feeling a little weak, or I'm feeling a little tired, or I stop sweating. At that point, you're done. You're not going to recover very quickly. I've been there. You know, I one time in my life I got to that point, and I think about 4 Gatorades and 6 or 8 bottles of water later, and I was just starting to feel somewhat normal again. So you really need to not only as an individual watch out for this, but with our coworkers as well, right? If you see somebody that isn't taking in fluids, get on them. Don't just ignore it. Say, hey man, take a break, get a drink, get some fluids in you, and not the energy drinks either.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Mark. So caffeine is a diuretic, right? We all know that. You drink tea, coffee, or these energy drinks, it makes you pee. So you're losing all this water that you're trying to keep in, and also the caffeine makes your heart pump faster, thins your blood out, and you're already nice and hot, and your blood's already nice and thin. So it causes some blood pressure issues as well, cardiovascular issues out the wazoo with it, and it is just it's bad, man. It's bad. Now I am a caffeine nut. I drink. If you cut me, I'll probably bleed coffee. Um, but you have to, limit. I'm sitting in an office all day. A couple, 3 or 4 cups of coffee is not going to cause too much of an issue. But when you start working outside, it's really gonna start to add up quick. And just so you know, water intake of water, how much you should have a day. Now, this is not taking into account strenuous activity or physical activity. 0.81 gallons for a man and 0.56 gallons for a woman. So almost a full gallon for men, 19 and older, and half a gallon for women, a little over half a gallon for women, 19 and older. That is not working. That's just being. You need to drink a gallon of water at least a day, so, or more.
Yeah, and I think the last thing, Jerry, I just want to touch on is, and I don't think we talk about this enough in our industry, and maybe it isn't even recognized enough, is the effects that dehydration or going towards dehydration has on your cognitive ability, right? Your ability to reason, your ability to think, to logically think through the tasks that you're performing in the field. And so, a lot of times we don't think of that, right? You just feel, oh, I'm not sweating enough, or I don't feel good, or I feel tired or achy, or whatever the case may be. I'm getting clammy skin. Incidents and accidents and what gets us to those positions and in those situations. And if you're not thinking straight, man, you're putting yourself in a real bad place, as well as your team that you're working with, because you're just not thinking straight, right? The lines aren't connecting between the ears, and that's a real bad position to be in. And so I think that needs to be stressed more in our industry of how much, especially coming into the summer months, how much this really limits your cognitive ability if you're going towards a heat illness.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been grayed out one time and had to go down and sit in a cool place with a lot of water and stuff. And there's a lot of really good hydration drinks out there now. Squelch, I think, is a big one. Um, things that will help. Liquid IV, all of those things are good to have. But really, nothing beats just plain old water, man.
Well, and do yourself a favor on those hydration things. I mean, I do some of those hydration things as well. Select the low sugar or no sugar. That sugar is doing you no good. It's just further taking you to a bad place. So I know it might taste a little better, but it's definitely not helping you out. So
after you start drinking enough water, man, you just really like the taste of water. I do anyway, at least.
Yeah. Well, and if you get in the habit of when you're really hot and sweaty out there on the job, nothing's better than water, man. It just kind of refreshes you, quenches your thirst. Once you do it a couple times and start getting in the habit, it's pretty easy to do. So, okay. Great discussion, Jerry. I think that's some relevant stuff there that hopefully we remind our folks to start thinking about, especially up here where it's still a little cooler and we're not really thinking about hydration yet. So,
well, those of us in the South who have already hit 80 at least once.
Yeah. Believe me, I wish I was down there, but it's coming.
The golf is great right now. So, just saying.
That's right. I hear you. So, okay.
We've made everybody wait long enough. Let's talk to our guest.
Let's talk to our guest. So, first of all, before we jump in with Mike, we want to give another shout out here to one of our sponsors who's going to sponsor this guest segment. So, Jerry, if you want to go ahead and give our sponsor here another plug.
So Beer Meters has this really cool thing, Beer USA Utility Support Assistance. It's one of a kind, no cost service to the electric utility industry, including professional customer service, technical support, repairs and calibration, live line conferencing, on-site field training, and speaking at tool and work methods committee meetings. Safety conferences, they go all over and do everything, seminars and presentations, and the exclusive 30-day tool trial. So here's the thing, if you think that you might need a good set of phasing sticks or some custom protective grounds, jumpers or pole guards or whatever, you can actually use their stuff for 30 days, risk-free. And if you don't like it, you'll send it back. But I haven't heard really a whole lot of people sending anything back to Beer Meters. So beermeters.com, go visit them or their customer service at beermeters.com, or heck, give them a call, 803-786-4839, Beer Meters. So we'll talk more about them here in just a little bit as well, because they've got some other cool stuff that I really want to talk about.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate that. And again, love Beer Meters. So, okay. The point we've been waiting for. So, yeah, nobody wants to hear us talk. They just come to hear the guests, right? So, again today, Mr. Mike Starner from NECA, National Electrical Contractors Association. Mike's the executive director of NECA. Welcome, Mike. Happy to have you.
Thanks, Mark. Jerry, it's good to see you guys. Yeah, I mirror your comments about Beer Meters, world-class organization, world-class equipment, and just, with ECOS and sort of their philosophy on paying forward and bringing the industry to a higher level. Who can't get behind that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's and we'll touch a little on ECOS here as we go through the podcast and touch on some things there. It really is a great effort that Brent and Beer Meters are putting forth there. So, well, Mike, before we kind of jump into some conversation here, why don't you give us a little about your background and kind of where you came from and kind of what got you to where you are today?
Yeah, and I used to tell people my story's a little unique, but the more I meet people, there's others like me out there. And Mark, your story's a little similar, right? So most of my time has been with an investor-owned utility. I worked my way up from an entry-level position as a streetlight servicer, went through the lineman program, was a trouble man, ran a crew, got promoted into supervision, responsible for various distribution operational units before getting into management. And that's when I got introduced, and we talked about this last time we were together, Mark. That's when I got introduced to substations. So then I was, working around substation construction and maintenance. And then I got moved into safety. So, you know, I didn't get into safety till later in the game. You know, a lot of people say, well, Mike's a safety guy. And what I usually tell people is I'm kind of an operations safety guy, right? So, you know, whatever that means, for me, that means I have a practical perspective on how to introduce safety to an organization, what it takes to intervene when you see these negative trends developing, what compliance looks like, how to support your employees and create healthy and safe work environments, but do it in a way that's doable, right? That's feasible, that's practical. Because safety people can quickly go from 0 to 1,000,000 miles an hour with these ideas of how we can have a world-class safety organization, but the organization isn't ready. Maybe you don't have the resources for it, and the culture might not even be ready. So most of my time with the investor-owned utility, before that, I was a line clearance tree trimmer. So, you know, learn, and I tell people all the time what a great feeder job for linemen, because you understand how to work on a crew, you understand how to use, you know, hazardous equipment, you're working in hazardous environments, you're rigging, you're climbing, you're working out of bucket trucks, you know, so all these things that help you sort of be prepared for the role of a lineman. And then after I left the utility in 2016, I went to work for a large contractor as a division manager. So, you know, back into operations, and I had a chance to do a little safety there. And I really started to miss it, you know, because I mentioned that I'm a kind of an operations safety guy. I really enjoy the challenge of identifying a problem that needs to be solved and trying to figure out how to fix it. And what's cool about safety is you got to do those things with other people's people, right? So, you know, generally your safety team is fairly limited, and any influence that you have has got to be through positive interactions, having, building confidence in your abilities, all these things, which to me was a lot more fun, honestly, than the operation side. So I seeked out and found another opportunity in safety. The next opportunity was to develop a corporate safety program. So that was a company that was kind of just getting started. They were sort of gobbling up these mom and pop shops, and they wanted to have a corporate safety presence, a corporate safety program. They needed somebody to sort of cobble that together. And, I raised my hand and said, I'm up for that. So throughout my career, I've always kind of been, where's the opportunity? And I always kind of looked at it. And this is something my grandfather used to say, do things that other people don't want to do. Not only is that a great opportunity, right? You get an opportunity to get in there quickly and make a big splash, but there's probably a reason people don't want to do it. And it's probably tied to either it's something challenging or something that's a little different. And, when you think about professional development and how can you be better at everything that you do, I encourage people to do that. What is something that nobody else wants to do? And how's this opportunity going to set you up for the next move? And so that's exactly what that job did for me. It wasn't too long after I kind of got some pieces in place and they were up and running and things were good, that I saw an opportunity with NECA. And I didn't have a lot of experience with NECA. That company I just was talking about had a contractor or an affiliate company that was a NECA member. So I knew about NECA a little bit, and I understood what NECA was doing with the electrical industry and sort of the portfolio of services that NECA provides for their members. But I wasn't completely familiar. And so I was reading through this LinkedIn post, and it said, hey, we're looking for a director for outside line safety. Here's what the job requires. Here's, the experience that we're looking for. And honestly, it was like my resume. And I said, well, that's almost too good to turn down. At least go in and have a conversation. So, I went in, had an interview with some esteemed folks in the industry that, their names, you can look in standard developing, books and publications and things and see these people's names, right? These are the guys that are interviewing me for this job. And I was like, wow. I remember telling my wife, I'm from a rural county in Maryland, kind of a little bit of a hillbilly, right? And, never really kind of exposed to some of these really cool things. And for the first time ever, it just smacked me in the face. I have an opportunity for the first time in my life to really have an impact and influence on the industry. And so think about that, right? So all the things that I've done, and I told you my story, all those pieces cobbled together put me in a position where I can add value. I told you how I love to influence others. I told you how I love operational safety. this job that I have today puts me in the best position to help our members be successful. And when we help our members, our employers be successful, there's a trickle down effect for the employees, the workers. But even more importantly, there's an effect that happens with the industry. So NECA is able to position itself to where we're representing the industry, the electrical contracting industry's interests, which even if you're not our member, the things that we work on, the places where we go, the positions that we take have a beneficial impact on the whole industry.
No, that's great. Just two things I kind of want to touch on there to follow up with that, Mike. I couldn't agree more about the operational safety guy, right? And I think you and I are exactly from the same background when it comes to that, because I'm the same way. As a working for a large utility, I started in the tools and worked my way up to supervision, and with our company, supervisors were the safety people, right? I mean, we had our safety department, which consisted of 3 or 4 people that were your safety experts. But really, the safety came to the supervisors and the workers to kind of handle on their own. And so you as a working safety person or operational safety person has a totally different view on a work area or a work site than a safety person that maybe doesn't have that working background. So you look at things a little different. You can kind of know what the guy's going to do next, or whether it's time to stop in and say, hey, hold on, stop. That's not going to turn out well. And so I think that's a very good tool to have in your back pocket as a safety person, is that background from operations. And the other thing I wanted to touch on, you mentioned about you enjoy being able to take a problem and dive in and figure out how to solve it, right? And I'm a big proponent of this. The more, and now transitioning, to ISPC, I kind of have the same platform as you to influence the industry versus one little company. And I can't stress enough that value of, instead of just throwing a safety rule at it, let's fix the problem, right? If there's a true something we can engineer out or figure out how to eliminate from the process versus just saying, well, just put your gloves and sleeves on and you'll be okay. Well, maybe there's a better way that we can literally eliminate the hazard instead of just trying to band-aid it, work around it, find a rule so we don't do this. That is so important.
But that comes back to the culture aspect of it that y'all had talked about previously. And until that culture's changed, if you have an unsafe culture, or it's not going to get any better. Now, both of you have effectively changed cultures, safety cultures, in areas that had bad karma and bad safety cultures going. What did you do to do that? What's the most effective way? I know upper level management buy-in is an absolute must, because that's where it starts, but you have to get the workers to buy in on it too. Tell me about some of the problems and obstacles, Mike.
So you want to know what's the secret sauce to improve organizational culture? And you know what? That's what we're all struggling with, try to figure it out. And, I think you could probably go back to the beginning of time of folks wanting to perform work without getting people hurt. And how do you make that happen, right? So we know one of the big contributing factors in an event is the human element. What behavior or what context to the way the employee was interacting in that system led or at least contributed to that event. And there's so many things you can go down a lot of rabbit holes as far as looking at the culture there. But we also have to look at the system itself. We have to look at the management team. We have to look at our standard operating procedures. So it's almost like the question's really about almost like a gardener looks at their garden, right? And all the elements that it takes to have a successful crop. From how the soil is amended to the amount of rainfall that you get, to the weeding, to if you're adding any kind of fertilizer. So you think of how complex that can be, and then think about a human being, how complex we are. And that's why culture is such an issue. But I think what needs to happen is you need to have a system. So a safety management system is developed in a way that, you have, management is setting the direction of where we're headed. They're providing the right kind of resources, the right kind of leadership to make sure that we understand where we're headed and how we're going to get there. That you are engaging with your employees. Your employees have a say. It's not just lip service. Whether that's a safety team, a committee, or having real frank conversations around the service center or the show up about what's happening organizationally, making sure that your safety team is in place, that you have a safety expertise, right, folks, both from compliance perspective, but also from the human performance and risk management side of things. Sort of having these technical experts that are monitoring and managing the system itself. And then it has to have a feedback loop, right? So that if you think about like a safety management system or any kind of management system, they're usually built with some sort of, it's a cycle, and you want to make sure that you're essentially you're caring for your culture. And one of the things that's difficult in our industry is, it's not the 60s and 70s where you have sort of in-house utility crews that have been there for their whole career, right? You get hired at the utility, you're going to retire at the utility as long as you keep your nose clean. That's what we used to get told. That it's a different industry now. I mean, have the percentage of contractors that are working on utility systems is higher than it's ever been. There's a lot of different reasons for that, but the contracting world is a different world. You have, folks that are responding to calls, there's a project being stood up. They might go from one side of the country to the next to go after the work. You might have a guy that all he wants to do is chase storms. So he's working with an aggregate service and getting involved in storm work only. And then he can sit back and chill out for the rest of the year or whatever. Right. So there is no one size fits all to solving the culture issue. And that's why I think more importantly than ever, us as a community of practice, right? So whether you're at the utility, or whether you're a contractor, whether you're with the union shop, or whether you're with the non-union shop, or whether you're investor owned or a cooperative or whatever it is, right? We can divide ourselves in all these different columns. But as a community of practice, we need to have these conversations, right? And we need to say, okay, what's the leading issues that we have out there? What's kind of leading to these issues? How can we collectively kind of wrap our arms around it? So the last thing you want to do is give, bad behavior, bad situations, bad habits, all these things. You don't want them to have sort of a safe place to sit and fester, right? So the way that you approach that is collectively coming together, shining a light on what we expect, from our industry. Because guess what? This is our industry and we take pride in it, right? And so me personally, I'm not going to settle for somebody that's just going to give half, come halfway to the table. I want everything you got, right? Because we need you. This industry is being faced with the most work we've probably ever seen, potential work. Now, how that goes into practice, how that gets put in the field, that remains to be seen. But our workforce, we've got tons of folks at the apprenticeship level ready to go, right? You got lots of young kids that are like, I want to do this work and make lots of money. It's a cool job. But we're missing the middle piece, and that's the bench strength. We're missing the culture of the crew. What's the collective seniority of the crew? How many life experiences, how many things have they seen go sideways, and how can they come together and say, right, we don't have that like we used to have. So really, we're really kind of in like a dire situation. It's not like the end of the world, but we can't just go with the flow. We have to pay attention. We have to be intentional. We have to understand what the issues are. And then we have to put our pride aside and say, how can we collectively come together to address these problems? So I think that's the one way we go after the culture. It's not a one size fits all. It's not, something that we can put our thumb on. There's a million books out there talking about culture, right? We still haven't figured it out. But I think the answer is us coming together and having a common language.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky, and the company that I work for, we kind of went through this evolution. We were in a bad place culturally in 2010ish, 2011. We got some new senior leadership that really wanted to change that culture. So I couldn't agree more. It absolutely has to start with senior leadership. You have to have that upper echelon buy-in, because this is going to take a monumental effort to change an organization's culture. all the way down to the field supervisor, right? You got to have buy-in from everybody. And ultimately, that field supervisor is probably the largest change agent, right? They need to be able to, if they don't buy in, you're not getting the rest of the troops to buy in. It's just not going to happen. Pressure, I think pressure is a big one. A lot of times I'd talk to people and they were like, well, I felt pressure to get the job done, or I felt pressure that I had to have this done in the next hour. And when you start to talk to folks that think that way, you end up finding out that it's really self-internalized pressure, right? They for some reason feel, and again, it goes back to the culture and the kind of aura around the organization, that they just kind of felt some way or another, hey, somebody is expecting me to get this done in the next half hour or hour. And so that really leads to bad decisions, right? And people taking shortcuts. Free to report. I think the organization has to be willing to let your people report the incidents or near misses, close calls, whatever you want to call them. You got to get that stuff out and talk about it, right? So that hopefully other people don't put themselves in that same position. And along with that goes sharing. We got to share. You mentioned sharing, Mike, and at a company level, you got to share across the internals in the company, and at the levels we're at now, you got to share across the industry. And I couldn't agree more. You and I talked about this at the conference. We got to get past as an industry these silos that we're in between union and non-union, and utility and co-op, or municipality, contractor. We got to put that stuff aside and start working at this together. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who we work for, what company, what organization, affiliation, it does not matter. We all want everybody to go home at the end of the day safe. And that's the bottom line, is we have to work together at this, or we're not going to go anywhere. And the last point I want to make is one thing that I know some organizations have done, my past organization is one of those, is they had a safety advocate program that was actually workers that would be pulled off the crew for where I was at. They did it 6 months at a time, and be able to share the way they did things in different areas of the company, because the way we do it here, I can go right to the next shop down, 10 mile down the road, and they do it a totally different way. And so, those are some things that potentially we could do to help. It's a lot different if you have a peer come out there and kind of visit your job and discuss what's going on and those type of things, than it is to have that safety guy come out there or supervisor, even for that matter, right? How many of us have been on a job when the supervisor shows up, work stops? Well, there's a problem. If you're a supervisor and you show up on your crew's job site and everybody stops working, you have a problem. There is something they are hiding from you that they don't want you to see them do, right? And so it took months for me to work with my crew when I was a supervisor and say, listen, when I show up on the site, I don't want you stopping work. I want you to continue to work. If I want to talk to you or we need to have a conversation, hey, I'll get you together and we'll do that. But that's one of those cultural things again.
And you mentioned that you only get one shot too with that, with those, like stop work authority. You tell everybody, oh, you've got stop work authority. If you see something that is unsafe or will cause an issue, stop the job. You have that authority. The young guy, the gung-ho guy, stops the job and gets reamed for it by everybody, by management, by, the foreman and everybody else. When he's doing what he's taught, coming out, these fresh ideas, these fresh faces, we have to promote that growth. Just like you mentioned a garden, Mike. If you've got that young sprout coming up, baby it, make sure it knows that it's okay to do these things, to create that culture. That's where it starts, to me. I mean, and I've seen it. I've never been a lineman. I'm going to put that out there, but I've been in blue collar industries where, you're given that issue. And I was one of the guys. I did a stop work on an environmental job one time and just got hammered. And after that, it was like, yeah, whatever, dude.
Yeah, you ain't never gonna say nothing again, are you?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't last too much longer after that because I saw it as an unsafe environment, and I had children at that point. So I'm like,
here's the thing: we did it to ourselves, right? So we've gotten. This is another cultural thing, right? We've gotten to the point where we start our day off. We give a guy a job jacket or the work plan for the day. They go out, they load up material, they get in their truck, and they go. And we don't see them at the end of the day until they come back. And then we pile on to the supervisor. Mark, to your point, the supervisor in our space is the safety supervisor. So this person who has a lot of responsibility for, field level safety, we load them up with administrative burdens. They're going to be on work management calls. They're going to be on this team or that team and this committee and that committee. How much time do we give them to get out on the job site so when they do come out on the job site, it's a novel thing. It's a unique, isolated event, and it gets these guys turned sideways. And the same thing happens with stop work authority. It happens so rare. We never practice it. We never really enforce it. And we never really talk about it. But we say, listen, you've got that responsibility, and we're going to make sure that you can do that when you need to do it. But it's a rare occurrence. So for the guy, it's not habitual. It's not culturally significant on the job site. So the one thing that we really need to do, and this takes money and time, is we got to make sure we got leaders in the field. We got to make sure that these frontline supervisors, general foremen, are on the job site often, and they need to be out there spending time to where it's not a big deal. So they're not shutting the work down because there's something weird about this guy's coming out on my job site today. It's just, hey, here comes Mike, and he's, maybe he's got some pizzas, and we're going to shoot the breeze a little bit, and he's going to give us a safety talk, and then he's going to watch. It just needs to not be a big deal, because once you achieve that, then you can start to observe natural behaviors. You can see where the risk really lies in your organization, task by task, right? So we're doing a pole change out today. This is something we do every day. It's bread and butter work for us. It's not really, we probably wouldn't bucket it as a high risk activity because of the construction and because of the access and everything, right? So that's the work you want to watch. That's the work where risk lies. That's where you start to see drift occur. And that's where you have an opportunity to intervene, and not in a way that's a big production, but just say, hey, listen, I saw you getting ready to do this. Why don't we do it a little bit differently? And so as a leadership, leader on that job site, one thing you do is you help reinforce the foreman who's trying to figure out how to be a field leader, right? So you get to model the behavior that you expect from them. And then the crew gets to see, hey, we can have these conversations without somebody looking like a corny nerd, right? Because that's what it is. Like, oh, this safety guys, all they want to do is talk. It becomes a joke because it's so unique and it's an outlier. So we need to just make being on a job site normal, having that interaction be normal, and then all the other things I think fall in place.
And I think that goes across the board, right? Normal. What is normal, right? And I think, one of the biggest things the last couple of years that I was a supervisor before I moved into training, we tried to do as an organization was get our field workers more involved and more aware of the entire process, right? Scheduling work, planning work, looking at jobs ahead of time, giving them the opportunity. Instead of the foreman going and doing all the field walk downs, let's get some of our leaders and journeymen that are going to be out there actually doing the work to go look at the work. Yes. Does it take an effort to pull somebody out of actual work time to say, okay, journeyman leader, I'm only going to pay you for 30 hours this week, and I'm actually going to pay you for 40, but you're only going to work 30, and the other 10, you're going to go look at jobs so that next week and the week after, you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. You know what's coming up. You know the work. You can start to prepare for it and prep for it and so on. So there's just a myriad of things that we can do to start moving this needle and getting people involved. We just need to take the time and slow down a little bit. And I know that's hard to do when believe me, I'm a business owner as well. It's about the bottom line, but it's not everything. We got to get there in the right way. being safe and doing this planning and having plans, believe me, it will all, in the end, help your bottom line, because people understand what's expected of them. They understand what the jobs are that are coming, and they don't have to go out there and stand there for 2 hours and look at the job because they have no clue. They never seen it before. That's not being productive. So that little bit of upfront planning and preparation goes a long way to safety and efficiency and what every bean counter wants, and that's the bottom line, right? And if we can develop these safe work habits and so on, and planning and preparation, I promise you the bottom line will actually look better than it does now. So, yeah, great conversation.
Yeah, and y'all mentioned money. Money is the driver. It is the root. And unfortunately, historically, when times get tight, when budget cutbacks happen, when the belt needs to get a little notch put in it and go a little bit tighter, safety and training are the two things that go first. And to me, that's the exact opposite of what it should be. When times get tight, like if you're not running jobs, it's a perfect opportunity to start to train, to get that muscle memory, that safe mental attitude. Now that's the history of it. How do we fix it? How do we fix that mentality from a corporate level or business level, Mike? I mean, do you have any idea?
Well, I think it starts with this idea that, and you guys have probably heard me say this before, but compliance is the baseline, right? That is what you have to do, right? That's the law. You're going to have to do this, or you're going to find yourself in hot water. So if you understand that that's what you have to do, everything above that is discretionary. You don't have to do it, right? And that's what, to your point, those are the things that find themselves on the chopping block when things get lean. We have a program to address this kind of trend we're seeing, or we want to look at this new kind of PPE, or there's a tool that's out there that might do this for us. Those are all things that cost money. Having the ratio between the crew and the foreman, or the crew and the general foreman, the supervisor, have those ratios small enough that the supervisor can find themselves on job sites quickly and spend some time there. That's all cost. So everything that you just talked about is all overhead, right? So in a business owner's perspective, these are things that, hopefully I have enough profit margin that I'm able to cover my overhead. But when things get lean and that profit margin shrinks, you have to make really hard decisions about how discretionary can I be with my safety program. And, that's a complex conversation, especially for a contractor, because if you're trying to, you're in a tough market and, the utility is, has really tight margins on the bids that are coming out. And, it really affects the ability that you have to be discretionary with your safety programs. And so that's a conversation I think needs to happen between contractors and utilities at the onboarding or the pre-qualification stage, right? Saying, I'm utility ABC. Here's what we expect from our contractors. Here's our values. Here's our mission. Here's how we service our members, or our customers. And here's the environment that we operate as far as regulatory wise. Our Public Service Commission has these priorities. Here's some issues that we're having in our system, whether it's reliability or we want to do a little more system hardening. Yeah, that's a little bit different conversation than just putting a bid out, RFP, and send your bids in, and we'll tell you if you got it or not, right? So at the very beginning, just sit down and say, hey, you want to do business with us? This is what's important for us. And this is what we expect from our contractors. And then the contractor has the ability to say, well, that's great. Let me tell you a little bit about our story. Yes, you may notice that some of our pricing is high here, or here. And let me tell you why that is. Well, we invest in our people this way. We do this kind of continuing education. We manage the proficiency of our employees. We have a safety team that we can have on site at any given time. We have, some of these initiatives underway to prevent hand injuries or soft. So if you sit down and have a conversation at the very beginning with the right people, then when you send your bids out, right, whether it's a lump sum bid or you're doing a T&E contract or you're doing unit-based billing, it doesn't really matter as long as you have that conversation. Everybody understands what each side is trying to manage, and you collectively have a goal in mind as far as how, because a contractor wants the utility to be successful, right? Because if the contractor can help the utility be successful, that means that's a long range play, right? That means I'm gonna be able to stay here and do work, and probably one of the last people going to be released when work dries up, right? So it's in the interest of the contractor to sit down and have that conversation. And guess what? The utility wants the same thing. They want to have projects delivered on time, built per the spec, with no unintended outages, no property damages, no safety incidents. And for that to occur, you need to have the right contractor. So that's where that comes into play. So I think when things get lean, I think when things get tough, it's going to go back to that community of practice I talked about, having that common language to sit down and say, okay, guess what, guys, things are getting tight around here. Here's what the next 5 years looks like for us. And here's the kind of work that you can expect to come your way. The contractor can then make decisions about how they can scale up or scale down and be ready for that, and communicate with their workforce, right? Because that's a big part, right? The contractor is really managing a couple things. They're managing labor and they're managing equipment, right? The materials are generally provided by the utility. You're building per the utility specs. So the contractor is trying to always manage, the equipment that they need for the project and their labor, and then all the, the other costs that come along with that. And so, making sure that contractor is prepared to understand what the long range deal is, they can scale up and scale down more effectively. And it's, I guess what I keep coming to is this relationship. It's this idea that there's no surprises, and we've identified where we're headed, and we're going to get there together. We kind of map that out, and it doesn't have to be a science project. It can just be sitting down at a lunch date with contract manager and a contractor saying, okay, here's what this looks like. And I know, in the utility space, we get this, we sort of get nervous about co-employment, giving work direction, overstepping our bounds, multi-employer work sites, all these things kind of get us wound up. But we got to figure out a way to have those conversations, because we know that if we don't have these conversations, we're just going to have more of the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Mike. I think too, it's all about, and we've talked about this, and I know this is one of our big positions at ISPC, is we want to develop partnerships, right? We want to have those companies and so on that we actually develop partnerships with, and we can work with over time to train and solve your issues and work on your safety stuff. And it's no different with a contractor and a utility. You couldn't be more spot on. You get bids from 3 or 4 contractors, and ultimately every time the lowest bid won. Well, at the end of the day, I think if you really sat down and looked at it, you didn't win, because more than likely that low bid contractor probably wasn't the safest, right? They probably don't have those programs in place that you as a utility are really looking for, because they're charging such a low premium. They're probably change ordering you to death on the job because they haven't planned and prepped it properly. So, all those things, I couldn't agree more with, what you said about getting that togetherness where we're working together and figuring it out together and moving forward together, not I'm utility, you're contractor, or whatever the case may be, company relationship wise. But it just goes back to what we've talked about this whole podcast about, we got to work together to solve these problems. And if we don't, we're not going to solve them. We'll have a podcast 5 years from now with you, Mike, and we'll be talking about the same thing. So hopefully not. But so
y'all talked about partnerships. Speaking of partnerships, our sponsor, Beer Meters, has the ECOS partnership, the Electric Culture of Safety. It's a grassroots nationwide safety partnership, bringing the electric utility industry together in unity, building a line team. ECOS partners sharing at no cost to your line crews, sharing their knowledge, experiences, expertise, and passion for the common goal of ensuring our heroes of light return home safely to their family crew when the task is complete. now over 12,000 partners in ECOS with monthly lineman safety national webinars, relevant topics on communication, leadership, organization, training, etc. It's easy to find them. Email safetytraining@beermeters.com or just go to electriccultureofsafety.com. ECOS, electriccultureofsafety.com. Together, we're changing our electric culture of safety.
Well, you Jerry, you'd mentioned where how to find them. You're not going to have trouble finding them. I mean, ECOS. I mean, I'll give it to that organization, man. Getting out there and getting your message out and having it readily accessible to folks and having it be free. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think every one of us has been one of those presenters at ECOS, and what Brent and his family are giving back to the utility industry is just it's priceless. You can't put a value on it, and I enjoyed. I got 2 more coming up this year that I'm going down again. I think we probably all are, and it's just a really good thing. Again, to get us all working as partners. So I think, Mike, it's been great, taking this time to have this conversation with you. As always, appreciate your insight. I think you bring a lot to our industry, and I look forward to maybe even getting a chance to maybe work, do some partnership stuff between our companies here in the near future. I think I think we can help each other out a lot. I think we can offer each other a lot. It's been really good to have you here today, Mike.
It was good to have you on this one after the last one that we did at the conference, at the trainers conference, the roundtable. Like I said, I was listening to that before we recorded this one, and I forgot how good that one actually was. So if you haven't listened to it, guys, go back and listen to episode 3. The special trainers conference episode. A lot of good insights from a lot of different people. It was basically a roundtable. So download it and listen to it. Just phenomenal. I'm a fan of everybody that was on that podcast and what they had to say and how they said it and how they got the points across. So, Mike, thank you again for hanging out with us. As always, we need to get you down here to Louisiana when we're all together again and have a cigar and a round of golf or something.
Yeah, that sounds good. And just parting words for anybody that's listening to this, that's thinking about whether or not safety is a profession that you want to get into. Sometimes we have trouble with guys who want to make that transition from the crew to safety. And I will just say there's no nobler profession than, a rewarding profession than being able to care for your brothers and sisters out there in the trade that you love. And you have the opportunity to make sure people go home to their families at the end of each day. And it doesn't make you a safety nerd. It makes you somebody that cares about other people and you love your trade. And so don't be discouraged. If you have an opportunity to do safety, get involved.
Absolutely.
Couldn't agree more, Mike. Yeah, go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, with that, I think that pretty much wraps us up, right, Mark?
Yeah.
The views and opinions shared in this podcast are the personal viewpoints of the participants and may not necessarily reflect the stance of ISPC and its staff. It is highly advised to consult your company management before implementing any actions or policy changes. Please support our sponsors bringing this content to you. Ask about Beer Meters. Visit beermeters.com. Guys, thank y'all again for everything. We appreciate y'all listening. Appreciate y'all downloading and taking the time with us. Mike, Mark, see y'all next time.
Thanks again, Mike. Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate everything. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, and we'll see you next time on ISPC Tailboard Talks.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.